Welcome back, guys, to Blackout War Stories. Before we start the video, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second. Thank you. October 1983. Hoia Baciu sat cold above Cluj, a low bowl of trees that held its breath. I lay in wet leaves and watched my compass needle twitch, then stall. The air smelled like iron and damp bark. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a dog barked, then another, then silence. My watch face fogged. The second hand stuttered and caught up. We were 4 when we stepped off the farm track. We were 2 by the time the fog closed in. I could taste metal. The dosimeter on my webbing clicked once, then went quiet. A pale glow sat between the birches, not a lamp, not a flare, just a smear that moved against the wind. Our radio gave carrier without voice. My partner squeezed my sleeve and pointed to a clearing that locals said killed sound. We went that way because the map said the ground was flat, and flat ground meant less noise. I marked a stump with tape and felt the forest lean in. What brought us there began months earlier, far from the trees. We were attached to a unit that didn't exist on paper. Officially, we were part of a NATO mapping team in West Germany. Unofficially, we handled field verifications for installations across the Eastern Bloc. Our orders came through channels that avoided names. They gave coordinates, time windows, and pickup points. We signed nothing. We left nothing. Romania was a strange place in 1983. It played both sides, tied to Moscow, but restless under Ceausescu. Western intelligence liked that tension. We could listen from afar, intercept radio bursts and cables, but we needed ground confirmation. That was our job. The device we had to check was a small sensor buried near Cluj. It had been placed years earlier by a Romanian engineer working with us. He went silent in 1981. The signal stopped months later. Washington wanted to know if it was still there or if someone else had found it. The location given matched a stretch of forest northwest of the city Hoia Baciu. I had heard of it once before. Locals called it a cursed forest. The name came up in some old intercept chatter, probably used as a cover point. The reports mentioned missing shepherds, odd lights, even burned patches that grew back in circles. We laughed, then packed extra batteries. Soldiers always joke about ghosts when the real threat is people with guns. Our team was 4 men, 2 of us from my unit, 1 linguist from Munich, and 1 technical officer with their recording gear. We carried standard reconnaissance loadouts, suppressed carbines, cameras, Geiger meters, and encrypted beacons. No insignia, no patches. The mission timeline was 48 hours. Cross from Hungary, confirm the cache, retrieve any data cores, and return. Secondary goal was to meet a courier claiming to have new encryption codes from inside Romania's defense network. If that part went bad, we were to destroy the link and get out. We studied maps for 3 days. The forest sat on a plateau, sloping into farmland, with a single dirt track leading to an abandoned collective farm. From there, the tree line thickened into heavy undergrowth. Our access point would be a shepherd's path marked by broken fencing. Intel warned us about Romanian border troops using dogs and local volunteers. The Securitat had increased patrols after a failed smuggling attempt near Cluj. Our window was short. The courier would only wait until dawn of the second day. We rehearsed contingencies. If radio failed, we used color-coded signal panels. If we were compromised, each man carried a one-time pad for emergency extraction requests. Standard Cold War procedure. The linguist, Sergeant Miller, joked that Romania had more ghosts than soldiers. The tech, Jensen, checked his dosimeter twice before we left. He said it clicked near old Soviet testing sites. I told him this wasn't one of them. We moved out from Budapest under civilian cover. Plain clothes, forged IDS, Hungarian plates. A local contact drove us to a farmhouse 10 kilometers from the border. From there, it was all on foot. At the staging point, we broke down gear into small loads. Each man carried only what he needed: cameras, maps, dry food, and medical kits. We wore wool, not synthetics, to keep quiet in brush. Radios were coded to low power, burst mode only. The border crossing was scheduled for 0100. No moon, temperature near freezing. We crossed through a dry creek bed, using a compass and luminous tape. The creek wound through scrub and broken fences. Every sound carried. We moved slow, 1 man at a time, 10 meters apart. Once inside Romania, The air felt heavier. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe it was the knowledge that getting caught meant interrogation, not diplomacy. Our route took us through farmland, then up toward the forest edge. In the distance, I could see the glow from Cluj's factories, staining the clouds orange. We reached the outer tree line at dawn. The place was silent. No birds, no farm dogs. Just a cold mist rolling low across the ground. Miller muttered that it looked like the world before the sound. Jensen marked bearings, then stopped. His compass needle wavered slightly. I told him it was probably the steel from the fence post nearby. He didn't answer. We pushed deeper, keeping to the track until it disappeared under leaves. Somewhere ahead lay the clearing where our cache was buried. We had coordinates, but the map detail was poor. The ground was uneven, ridged by erosion and old stumps. We used dead reckoning, pacing every 100 meters, marking trees with tape. The forest felt strange. The trunks bent in odd angles, like they had grown under pressure. The air carried a faint chemical smell, almost like burnt plastic. I thought it was nearby farms burning waste. Still, it stayed in my head longer than it should have. By midday, we reached a small rise. Jensen checked the radio. The signal came through, weak but readable. Command confirmed our status and gave us one word: proceed. That night, we made camp under a stand of birch trees. No fire, just ration heat packs and cold air. Somewhere in the distance, I heard what sounded like a tractor, then silence again. The next morning, fog settled thick and low. Our bearings showed we were less than 1 kilometer from the coordinates. Miller spotted a narrow trail leading downhill toward what looked like an old field. That was where we needed to go. And that is how we came to the edge of the clearing that would change everything. We started moving toward the clearing just after dawn. The fog sat heavy on the ground, thick enough to blur the trees into outlines. Our boots made almost no sound. It was colder than the night before. The air felt still, like the forest was waiting for something. We kept our spacing tight, 10 meters between each man. Jensen carried the detector pack. Miller handled the map. The fourth man, Cole, took point. He had done tours in Germany and knew how to move through tight terrain. I watched his back vanish and reappear through the mist. Our plan was simple: reach the coordinate grid, sweep with detectors, confirm or recover the cache, then move south to the exfiltration line near the Sums River. The courier was expected at the same site, using a signal lamp to identify himself. We were told to expect a single flash sequence. 2 long, 1 short. Anything else meant abort. The trees thinned as we moved downhill. The ground opened into a circle of grass no more than 60 meters wide. The soil looked different, pale and flat, as if something had burned there long ago. No shrubs, no thick grass, just short blades and hard earth. It matched the old photos in our briefing packet. Locals called it the dead field. Cole scanned the perimeter. Miller unpacked the receiver, tuned it to the old beacon frequency, and waited. Nothing but static. Jensen adjusted the antenna and checked the battery. The signal was dead. We expected that. It had been silent for years. Still, we needed proof. We started probing the soil near a cluster of stumps. The metal detector gave a faint tone, then another. We dug a shallow trench and hit metal within minutes. A corroded tube, sealed tight. Jensen wiped mud from the top and showed the faint imprint of serial markings. It matched the device's code prefix. We logged it and reburied it until nightfall. Miller wrote down readings. The Geiger counter ticked softly but stayed below danger. The air temperature dropped 2 degrees in less than 10 minutes. Cole asked if it was elevation. It wasn't. The ridgeline didn't change that fast. We decided to hold the clearing until dark. The courier's signal window opened at 2000 hours. We took turns watching the tree line. Nothing moved, no wind, no birds. The quiet was unnatural, the kind that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Around mid-afternoon, the radios began cutting out. The first burst from command came through broken. Jensen tried resetting the frequency. The carrier stayed open, but no voice followed. He frowned, tapped the handset, then shrugged. We still had line-of-sight markers and flares for emergency link-up. Cole mentioned seeing a faint shimmer near the opposite edge of the clearing. I looked. Nothing there. Maybe heat rising from the ground, but it was too cold for that. He said it looked like glass catching light. We made a note of it in the log just in case. We stayed until sunset. The fog began to creep back in from the west. When the first darkness settled, we prepared for the signal. Miller faced the ridge with binoculars. I checked bearings again. The compass needle drifted slightly east, then snapped back north. I'd seen compass error before, but never that much in still air. At 2013, a single flash cut through the mist from the ridgeline. It didn't match the agreed pattern. One long, then silence. We waited. Another flash, shorter this time, then gone. No sequence, no rhythm. We held position. Miller whispered that it might be the courier testing signal range. We gave it another 10 minutes, no more flashes. Jensen scanned with the thermal scope, but it showed nothing. The rangefinder threw interference. He switched it off. Cole suggested moving toward the ridge to verify. I told him to hold. If it was the courier, he'd repeat the pattern. If it wasn't, it was a risk we couldn't afford. We stayed put. At 2030, the fog thickened again, denser than before. Visibility dropped to less than 10 meters. Our breath hung white. The radios stayed silent. We couldn't even raise each other on short-range channels. Something in the air blocked everything. We set up a short perimeter, each man facing a cardinal point. I took north. I could barely see the edge of the clearing. My mind stayed on the missing signal. If the courier had been delayed or compromised, that meant local forces might already know we were here. The plan had contingencies. If no contact was made within 2 hours, we were to extract south by the creek route. But before leaving, we needed a full reading on the cache site. That was our proof. Command would not accept an empty report. At 2,200, we went back to the trench. The soil had hardened, almost frozen. We opened the tube, retrieved a single canister, and resealed the rest. Inside was a small film sleeve and a metal core no bigger than a fist. Jensen logged the codes, wrapped it in cloth, and stored it in his pack. We agreed to move before sunrise. That gave us 6 hours to rest. I took first watch. The others settled quietly. The forest stayed silent. Once or twice, I thought I heard low static in my earpiece, even though the radio was off. It was faint, like someone breathing through static. I removed the headset and sat still. Just before dawn, a sound came from the trees. Not a footstep, not an animal. It was like wind moving in one direction only. Cole woke up and looked at me. Neither of us said a word. That was the first sign that something was not right in Hoia Baciu. We broke camp before sunrise. The fog held low and gray, clinging to our gear as we moved out. The forest had changed overnight. It felt smaller, like the trees had closed in around us. Our goal was to circle south, cross a shallow valley, and follow the creek to the exfil point. Cole led. Miller covered rear. I kept the compass steady on bearing 185. The needle wobbled every few seconds, just enough to throw distance estimates off. We compensated with pacing, counting each step. After 30 minutes, we lost the trail. The ground dipped where the map said it should rise. Either our reading was wrong, or the terrain had shifted since the last survey. Jensen checked the topograph and frowned. Nothing matched. The contours were off by at least 20 meters. We stopped near a line of birches to reset bearings. That was when I saw it, something metallic caught in the undergrowth. I brushed away leaves and found a rusted wire antenna, thin as piano string, wrapped around a branch. It looked recent, not ours. The insulation was intact, no corrosion. Someone had strung it as a directional line. Miller said it could be a local communication relay or part of the old sensor network. I doubted it. The orientation faced west, not toward Cluj. I logged the find, then we cut the line and packed a piece of it for later analysis. We moved again. Every few minutes, the air seemed to thicken, like walking through invisible layers. The sound of our steps changed, too soft, then suddenly sharp, as if the ground texture kept shifting. Cole raised his hand. He pointed to the left, toward a small depression filled with fog. There were footprints there, not ours, deep, heel first, made by someone carrying weight. The direction led away from the clearing, toward the ridge where we had seen the flash the night before. We followed slowly, weapons ready, careful not to step on the tracks. They were fresh, maybe an hour old. The stride was uneven, like whoever made them was injured or moving fast. Then halfway along the trail, the print stopped. Not faded, not washed out. just stopped mid-step. Jensen whispered that the soil was compact enough to hold impressions for hours. He was right, but there was nothing beyond the last print, only undisturbed leaves. No drag marks, no sign of turning back. I checked my watch. The second hand had frozen. The minute hand moved, but the seconds were stuck between ticks. I tapped the glass. It started again. We held position. The forest made a low humming sound, faint but constant. It came from nowhere specific, like a faraway generator buried under the ground. The radios buzzed once, then cleared. Cole signaled to continue toward the ridge. The path curved uphill and vanished into thick brush. The fog seemed to glow faintly, not from sunlight, but from within itself. At the top, the ground leveled. The air smelled metallic again. Miller took a reading with the dosimeter. Levels rose slightly, then dropped back to normal. Nothing dangerous but unusual for untouched terrain. We found another mark there, this time a short section of nylon cord tied around a stump. It looked like one of our own signal ties. Same color, same length, but we hadn't placed it. Cole stared at it for a long time. He said nothing, just tore it loose and kept walking. The fog behind us began to thin, revealing the faint outline of the clearing we had left. Only now it looked farther away than it should have been. That was when Jensen said quietly, "We've been turning in circles." I checked the compass again. The needle pointed east this time, even though the sun's glow showed it should have been south. We were off track, and whatever caused it wasn't mechanical failure. We paused to reorient, but something moved ahead, a flicker of light. Quick, low to the ground, then gone. Cole signaled a halt. We waited, listening. Nothing. Then another flash, closer this time, bright enough to see shadows jump. It wasn't a torch or a flare. The color was white-green, like lightning seen through water. We approached slowly, weapons up. When we reached the spot, there was nothing but flattened grass and a faint smell of ozone. The humming stopped. Silence returned. I looked back toward the others. In that moment, the forest felt like it was holding its breath again. We moved toward the east slope. The fog thinned, but the light never felt natural. It had a dull green cast that made every shadow look wrong. Cole led us along a narrow gully, careful with every step. The soil was soft, packed with old roots. Halfway down, Jensen stopped. His detector clicked faintly, a slow, irregular pulse. He adjusted the gain, expecting static, but the signal rose like something underneath us was reacting. He crouched, brushed the soil, and found a patch of disturbed ground. We dug with our knives until we hit metal. A second canister, smaller than the first, wedged under a root. It wasn't on our list. There were no markings. The seal looked clean, newer than it should have been. Someone had been here after the original drop. Miller checked coordinates. We were 200 meters off our map point. That didn't make sense. Our pace count hadn't changed. Either our bearings drifted or the coordinates were false. Jensen opened the canister. Inside was a strip of film, no label, no tag. He held it up and saw shapes, maybe technical images, maybe calibration marks. It wasn't message traffic. We wrapped it up and kept moving. The air grew colder again. Every breath hung like smoke. I started feeling pressure in my ears, like we were gaining altitude, but the ground was level. The forest began to feel heavier with each step. Even sound seemed slower, like it had to push through air that didn't want it. We came to a small clearing, maybe 15 meters wide. The ground was bare, cracked in circles, as if something had burned from below. In the center lay a broken tripod, scorched black. A wire coil ran from its base into the soil, melted at the ends. Cole said it looked like old telemetry equipment, maybe from a geological survey, but the components were wrong. No markings, no serials, just clean aluminum under the burn. We decided to log the site, then move out. The dosimeter ticked again, steady this time, not dangerous but present. The forest air carried the smell of wet iron. While Jensen took photos, I noticed footprints again near the edge. Bare footprints, small, shallow, like someone had walked across mud and left faint impressions that never dried. They led into the tree line, then stopped halfway. Miller looked uneasy. He said we needed to head back to the main clearing and reset bearings before dark. Cole agreed. We turned north, but when we reached the ridge, nothing looked familiar. The landmarks had shifted. The same group of birches appeared ahead again, the same cut stump. Even the tape mark I had tied 2 hours earlier was back, fresh and clean. We were moving in a loop. Jensen switched to backup compass. Same result. Both needles drifted and froze at different points. No magnetic field should behave like that without interference. He mentioned natural magnetite pockets, but even that didn't explain it. We took a short halt. The forest had no sound, no insects, no distant traffic. Then faint and far off came a whistle. 3 short tones, not ours. Cole looked at me. His face was pale. We waited, listening. Another whistle answered from the opposite ridge. I checked the watch again. It had stopped completely this time. Miller's watch had too. Jensen's had jumped ahead nearly 10 minutes. The air pressed down harder. My hearing dulled, like being underwater. Then through the mist, a figure moved between trees. Human shape, gray and slow, walking in a straight line. We froze. Cole aimed, ready to signal, but the figure vanished mid-step. Not into cover, just gone. Jensen whispered that maybe it was refraction from the fog. I wanted to believe him. None of us spoke after that. We decided to fall back to the last known point, mark it, and set camp before nightfall. The fog thickened again, heavy and low. As we walked, the ground underfoot began to hum, faint vibration through the soles. We reached the stump where we had found the antenna earlier. The wire was gone. No trace, no cut ends, only smooth bark. Cole said, "We move now, no stop." We did. The forest felt alive, not in a way you could see, but in pressure, sound, and silence that followed our every move. By nightfall, we were back near the clearing, though none of us remembered turning that direction. The light was gone. The trees swayed without wind. That was when the radio started picking up faint carrier tones again, like someone trying to transmit on our frequency, but staying just below range. Jensen tried to tune it, but the static only grew louder until the whole set shut itself off. We stayed still, waiting for anything we could recognize, but there was only that low hum again, buried somewhere deep in the ground. And somewhere out there, someone or something was moving in the same rhythm we were. Night came without warning. The fog thickened until our lamps barely cut 5 feet ahead. We huddled close, backs to each other, eyes on the dark between trunks. The forest had gone quiet again, too quiet. Even the hum underfoot had stopped. Jensen was working on the radio when his headset gave a burst of static, then a voice, just a single word stretched and hollow. None of us could make it out. He froze, waiting for repeat. Nothing came. The channel stayed open but dead. Cole ordered us to pack up. We'd had enough. We'd take the data we had and move south toward the river. The forest didn't want us here, and neither did I. We took bearings using the last visible stars. The compass pointed somewhere between southeast and nowhere. We started walking anyway, staying tight. The fog muffled sounds so much that even our steps felt distant. Every few minutes we checked count and spacing. After half an hour, the ground leveled into another open patch. I thought it was the same clearing until I saw the stump in the center. Different shape, different burn marks. We approached carefully. In the dim light, I saw something half buried near the stump metal casing. Same size as the first tube. Jensen brushed dirt away. The lid wasn't sealed. Inside was a single sheet of film, cracked and half burned, with strange lines drawn over it. Not text, just curved patterns, like interference maps or radiation traces. No marking, no label. Whoever placed it here wanted someone to find it, but not understand it. Miller said maybe the courier panicked and left fragments to throw off pursuit. That made sense. But the spacing of the caches was too deliberate. They were placed in a spiral around the clearing, each one drawing us deeper in. We set a new perimeter. Cole took point, covering the ridge. I started logging positions. That was when Miller whispered that he saw movement. A person crouched at the far edge, half hidden. We froze. The figure didn't move, just stayed still, watching. Cole raised his rifle, signaled to challenge. No answer. Then slowly, the shape turned. In the fog, it looked human, but wrong. The outline shimmered like heat. I blinked, and it was gone. We searched the edge and found nothing. No prints, no sound, just the smell of ozone again. The air pressure dropped hard enough that our ears popped. The radio clicked on by itself, transmitting a steady tone for 3 seconds, then cutting out. Jensen looked shaken. He said the tone matched a frequency used in test calibration for our own sensors. That meant either someone had copied our signals or we were picking up a reflection from our old equipment. We opened the last canister we carried to compare. The internal chip inside had fused. Heat damage. It shouldn't have been possible in that temperature. The readings still showed faint magnetic flux patterns. Jensen recorded them by hand. Then the compass needles began spinning, all 4 at once. No magnets nearby, no interference devices on. The movement lasted for 20 seconds, then stopped dead, all pointing in different directions. Cole gave the order to move fast. We turned back toward the path we believed led south. The fog seemed to shift with us. The trees bent the wrong way, leaning inward. Every 50 meters, we found another of our own markers. Tape strips, wire tags, knots, duplicates of what we had placed hours earlier. Someone was copying our trail. Miller grew restless. He said we were being herded, led back toward the core of the forest. The terrain backed his claim. Every direction we took eventually curved back to the same clearing. At 0300, we heard the whistle again. One tone, then another, then silence. Not distant this time, but close. Maybe 50 meters. We raised weapons and scanned. A figure crossed between trees, same outline as before. Cole stepped forward to signal, but the fog swallowed the shape before we could see it clearly. We broke formation to chase. Jensen covered the equipment. Miller followed Cole. I stayed last, tracking their lamps through the haze. Their lights flickered once, then went out. I called over comms, no reply. By the time I reached the clearing, only Jensen remained, standing by the tripod. His face was pale. He said they went after the light and never came back. No sound, no struggle, just gone. We searched until dawn, circling the clearing in widening loops. The forest looked different each pass. Landmarks shifted, paths ended in places they shouldn't. I felt the same drop in pressure every time we crossed the center of the clearing, like walking through a bubble of cold air. We were down to 2 men, 1 working radio, and half a map that no longer matched anything on the ground. That was when I realized this wasn't about retrieval anymore. Someone or something wanted to erase every trace we left. By sunrise, the fog thinned, but the light stayed gray. The forest looked washed out, colors drained like old film. Only 2 of us left, Jensen and me. We didn't talk much. We were focused on finding a way out. We headed southwest using terrain cues. The ridgeline and the distant hum of the city were faint guides. Every few minutes, we stopped to check our bearings. The compass refused to settle. The forest floor vibrated faintly, almost like distant machinery underground. Jensen marked distance in his notebook. At 2 kilometers by pace, he stopped suddenly. Ahead, the ground had collapsed. A sinkhole, wide as a small house, dark inside. Steam or mist rose from it. Not smoke, not dust. We stepped closer, careful. At the edge, I saw something shiny half buried along the inner wall. Metal tubing, thin, spiraled. Not natural. Jensen said it looked like the same coil from the tripod we'd found earlier. Maybe more of the same installation, maybe older. He leaned forward to take a picture. The flash went off, and for a moment, the light caught movement inside the hole. A figure below, maybe 10 feet down, facing away. Human height, unmoving. We froze. Jensen called out once, no reply. When we looked again, there was nothing. Only mist curling upward. The air temperature dropped fast. My breath came out in clouds. Jensen said we should leave the site and regroup farther down the slope. I agreed. As we turned, a sound came from the hole. Soft, like fabric sliding over rock. We didn't look back. We made for the slope. The trees here grew denser, trunks close together. Branches snapped underfoot, echoing too loud in the stillness. The fog followed us down like a wall. After about 20 minutes, Jensen stopped again. His eyes were fixed on something behind me. I turned. Between the trees not far, a light blinked once. Greenish white, the same as before. It hovered low, then moved sideways, slow and steady. He said it might be the courier's signal. I didn't answer. The pattern didn't match. Still, he started toward it, slow but certain, as if drawn. I reached for him, but he kept walking. I followed. The ground softened. The light stayed just ahead, always out of reach. Then suddenly, it vanished. Jensen stood still, confused. His breathing was heavy. He turned back toward me and then he was gone. No sound, no movement, nothing. The fog closed where he'd stood. I called his name. No answer. I ran forward, only empty ground. His footprints ended mid-step, same as before with Cole. Panic hit, but training kept me moving. I checked bearings, turned toward the ridge and started marking trees with my knife. The fog made it hard to tell direction. My hands shook. The radio hissed again, then cleared. A voice came through, faint. "Report position." I recognized the format, our command code, but wrong tone. The accent was off. Someone else was on our frequency. I didn't reply. I turned off transmit and listened. The voice repeated the phrase, then switched languages. Romanian. Only fragments. 2. In forest. Lost. Proceed. I shut the set down completely and kept walking. My breathing echoed too loud in my own ears. The forest pressed close. The fog turned darker, tinted green from reflected light that had no source. I stumbled through brush and broke into another open space. The clearing again. Same shape, same burned center. Only now a new tripod stood there, upright and clean. Wires coiled neatly around its base. I approached slowly. The metal was warm to the touch. The air around it buzzed faintly like static. In the grass nearby lay one of our canisters, open and empty. I crouched, checked the markings. It was the same serial as the one we had buried first. The ground pulsed once under my boots, a vibration, steady and deep. I looked up, scanning the trees. The light moved again between trunks, quick, sharp, like a strobe. My heartbeat matched its rhythm. I pulled the radio battery, stuffed it into my pack, and backed away from the tripod. The static in the air grew louder, almost a low electrical hum. Then it stopped, all at once. For a second, I heard nothing at all. No wind, no breath, no sound. The forest froze. Then came a single metallic crack from behind me, like something snapping under strain. I turned, weapon raised, but the fog swallowed everything beyond 10 meters. My pulse raced. The silence was complete. That's when I saw it, a shape standing just inside the fog, motionless, facing me. Same height as a man, same stillness. And it was standing where Jensen had disappeared. The shape stood about 10 meters away. It didn't move. I aimed center mass, finger ready. Nothing happened. The fog around it shimmered faintly, and the form began to lose edges, like heat distortion. I blinked hard. It was gone. My breath came fast. I stepped back, slow, trying to listen for anything human. Footsteps, gear, movement. But there was only the hiss of the fog. I kept the weapon raised and turned toward the ridge. The compass still spun. I had one direction left, down. The sound of a river, faint but real, reached my ears. I trusted that. Sound doesn't lie like light does. The slope was steep. I slid more than walked, holding roots for balance. The soil was slick, dark with moisture. My boots sank deep. Every few steps I looked back. The fog followed downhill, but slower. Halfway down, the hum came again, louder. It vibrated through the ground in my chest. My vision blurred for a second. I forced myself to focus. The fog behind me began pulsing with faint flashes, green, then white. I ran. My pack hit against my back with every stride. Branches tore at my sleeves. I broke through brush into a lower basin where the air felt clearer. The hum stopped. Ahead, a small stream cut through the dirt. Not wide, but fast. I crouched, filled one glove with water, and splashed my face. The cold steadied me. I followed the stream downhill, using it as a guide. The forest thinned gradually. The trees grew wider apart. Light breaking through in weak shafts. For a moment, I thought I could hear traffic, distant engines, maybe from the city. Hope felt dangerous, but I held on to it. Then the radio clicked on again. I hadn't touched it. The speaker crackled once, then Jensen's voice came through. "Don't move." Just that. Calm, quiet, exactly his tone. I froze. My hands tightened on the weapon. "Jensen?" I said. No reply. The static came back, then cut. The line went dead. I switched it off and took the battery out. The air felt heavier again, pressing on my skin. The sound of the stream seemed to fade into the distance, even though it ran beside me. The next few minutes blurred. I walked fast, eyes scanning, trying to hold a straight line. Every few meters, something shifted in the trees, faint shadows always just outside focus. My body moved on habit. My mind was somewhere between fear and procedure. The ground leveled into another open area. This one was smaller, ringed by stunted trees. In the center stood a metal pole, half buried with wires dangling like roots. The soil was dark and soft. My boots sank and the earth gave a wet sound. I knelt. There was a piece of fabric caught under the wire. I pulled it free, a torn patch from a uniform sleeve. Hours, faded, damp, still warm. I stepped back. My body knew before my mind did I wasn't supposed to be here. This wasn't the way out. The forest had folded again. The hum came back, deep and steady. I dropped to one knee and scanned the edges. The fog began pushing in from all sides. It didn't roll. It advanced like it was being drawn forward by something pulling air from above. My earpiece popped once, then silence. The fog reached my knees. Static electricity prickled on my arms. I could see faint arcs jumping between my rifle and the air. Then, through the mist, a single light appeared above the clearing. Not large, about the size of a lantern, hanging motionless at tree height. It pulsed slowly, almost breathing. I watched it for a long moment. It drifted closer. The hum rose in pitch. My vision started to tunnel, colors draining out of everything except that light. My heartbeat drowned out the sound. Instinct took over. I grabbed the metal core from my pack, the one we'd recovered earlier, and threw it toward the light. The hum broke like a string snapping. The air cracked with pressure. The light flickered once and vanished. Everything went still again. The fog began to thin. My vision cleared. The clearing was empty. The hum was gone. Only my own breathing filled the air. I stayed there for several minutes, waiting for anything to move. Nothing did. Finally, I turned back toward where I thought the river was. I walked until I heard running water again. That sound kept me alive. It led me downhill until the forest gave way to open field. In the distance, faint and far, I saw the orange glow of Cluj's industrial lights. I did not look back. By the time I reached the outskirts of Cluj, daylight had returned. The city moved like any other, quiet and gray, unaware of what lay a few kilometers away. Smoke from factory stacks drifted slow across the valley. I kept to side roads, coat pulled tight, rifle broken down in my pack. The plan was to reach the contact safe house near the rail yards. From there, a local asset would move me west toward the border. I followed tram lines until I found the old freight district. The smell of oil and metal hung in the air. The safe house was in a 2-story building above a repair shop. I climbed the back stairs and knocked twice, then once. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. The lock was new, not the kind our team used. I backed off and watched from across the street. No one entered for nearly an hour. Either the contact had been lifted or the house was burned. I couldn't risk it. I moved toward the industrial zone, blending with early workers. My boots were muddy, my hands shaking from exhaustion. At a corner cafe, I bought bread with the little local money I had. The woman at the counter didn't look at me twice. I ate standing up, trying to steady my thoughts. 2 men gone. No trace, no sound, no evidence I could explain. My report would sound like fiction. I needed another route out. Our fallback plan used the rail line west to Oradea, then a secondary crossing by night. I made my way to the freight yards and waited by a line of empty cars. A guard passed, barely noticing me. When he turned, I climbed into an open wagon filled with scrap and hid under canvas. The train moved by late afternoon. Every turn of the wheels sounded like a heartbeat. I stayed still, counting stations by sound. Hours passed. The smell of iron filled my nose. Somewhere past Sayusia, the train slowed. I slipped out, dropped into the grass, and crawled toward the woods. The river wasn't far. I could hear it long before I saw it. Fast water over stones, cold enough to sting. On the far side was Hungary and safety. I waited for dark. Patrol lights passed twice along the opposite bank. When the beam moved away, I waded in. The current was strong. I kept low, letting the water cover me to the chest. My pack dragged me sideways. I kicked hard, slipping once on a rock, swallowing cold water. My arms burned, but I reached the far bank and crawled up the slope. A light flashed from the trees, one long, one short. The signal meant friendly contact. A man stepped out, civilian clothes, heavy coat. He said nothing, just pointed west. I followed. We walked for nearly 2 kilometers through farmland before reaching a dirt road. A car waited there. Old Dacia, engine idling. I got in the back seat. The driver didn't look at me. The man beside me passed a towel and a flask of clear liquid. I drank. It burned but steadied me. He asked only one question in broken English. "Others?" I shook my head. He nodded once and faced forward. The rest of the drive was silent. We crossed into Hungary without trouble. Whatever documents they carried worked. I kept my head down, face hidden under the coat. When the car stopped outside Budapest, the man handed me an envelope and left without a word. Inside was a hotel key and a single instruction. Wait. I spent 2 days in that room. The walls were bare. The phone rang only once. A voice told me when to be ready. A black sedan picked me up before dawn and drove me to an apartment on the edge of the city. 2 Americans waited there. Plain suits, tired eyes. They took my pack and my notebook. They asked questions for 8 hours straight, timings, terrain, magnetic readings, sound anomalies, every detail I could recall. I gave them everything. When I mentioned the lights, they didn't react. When I spoke about the missing men, they wrote faster but said nothing. At the end, one of them said the core would be sent to Germany for analysis. They would contact families later. I knew what that meant. They told me to rest. I slept 12 hours, dreamless. When I woke, the room was empty except for my clothes and a train ticket to Munich. I left that night without asking questions. The last thing I saw from the train window was the faint silhouette of mountains fading into fog. It looked too familiar. I reached Munich 2 days later. A man from the base met me at the station. No uniform, no welcome, just a short nod and a drive to the compound outside the city. The debrief room was small, gray walls, one light overhead. I handed over my field book, my watch, and the damaged radio set. The officer in charge asked for a direct summary. I gave the same sequence I had told in Budapest, word for word. Coordinates, contact loss, the lights, the missing men. He wrote it all down without expression. When I finished, he said, "You did your job." That was it. No reaction, no follow-up. They sent me to medical the next morning. Routine check, blood tests, reflexes, cognitive review. The doctor kept glancing at my pupils. He said I had mild exposure symptoms, maybe from soil contamination. I told him about the metallic taste in the air and the radiation spikes. He wrote it down and told me to rest a week. I spent that time alone in the barracks. I couldn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the fog moving like a living thing, folding around trees. The hum still echoed in my ears. I stopped wearing the watch they issued me after it began to run slow again. A week later, I was called back to headquarters. The briefing room was colder than before. My report had been classified under a new heading Level 4 compartment, meaning I couldn't access it again. They told me the operation name was changed from the field code to Incident HB-3. No one explained what the 3 stood for. I asked about Cole, Miller, and Jensen. They said recovery efforts found no trace. The Romanian government denied any engagement or patrols in that area. The forest was declared restricted by local authorities days after we left, listed as a radiation hazard zone. The timing was not coincidence. 2 months later, a courier from technical analysis handed me a brief note, stamped internal. The core we recovered had partial data, signal patterns, not messages, frequencies repeated in intervals that didn't match known communications. They resembled atmospheric tests, but no source matched them. The origin line pointed inside Romania, near Cluj, same sector. The file was sealed the next day. I never saw it again. Years passed. I moved to other assignments, Central Europe, then the Middle East. Routine work, no anomalies, just operations. But nothing ever felt the same. The forest had left a mark that training couldn't erase. Sometimes during night exercises, I'd catch myself stopping mid-step when sound dropped out for no reason. I'd wait for that hum, the one I swore was in my bones. It never came, but the silence always did. In 1986, a civilian science team from Cluj reported magnetic distortions inside Hoia Baciu. The same month, a NATO analyst circulated a memo comparing those readings to ours from 1983. Both patterns were identical. The memo disappeared from files a week later. After that, no one spoke of Romania in briefings again. The topic was off limits. Anyone who brought it up got reassigned. I learned to stay quiet. By the late 80s, the Cold War began to fade. Missions shifted east, then south. My time in Europe ended without ceremony. I carried the same field notebook with me until I retired. Most pages were blank. Only one line mattered, written the night I left Cluj. 3 entered. 1 returned. Forest unchanged. I never learned what really happened to the others. No graves, no reports, no evidence. Just names on a sealed list somewhere. But every few years, someone new would ask in low voice if I'd ever been near Cluj in the early 80s. When I said yes, they'd nod slowly and change the subject. They already knew the rest. That was the last time I spoke of Hoia Baciu under command authority. It has been more than 40 years. Romania changed. The regime fell. New maps, new borders, new names. But the forest stayed the same. Last year, I saw a magazine article calling Hoia Baciu Europe's Bermuda Triangle. Tourists go there now, taking pictures where we bled and vanished. They speak of ghosts and lights. They don't mention radiation or missing soldiers. I looked at those photos for a long time. Same bent trees, same clearing, the soil still pale like ash. The writer said compasses still fail inside. That part was true. People want mystery. They need it. I learned the hard way that mystery is not wonder. It's loss you can't explain. I tried to find Jensen's family once. His sister lived in Ohio. She said the army told her he died in an accident overseas. She never knew where. I didn't tell her. Some truths do nothing but reopen what time barely closes. Sometimes I think about that hum under the ground. Maybe it was power lines, old Soviet gear, or magnetic pockets. Maybe something natural we still don't understand. The forest made us face the limits of reason. When that happens, fear fills the space truth leaves empty. If you ask me what happened, I'll tell you this. The forest erased 3 men. It left me behind to remember. And I do. Every night before sleep, when silence stretches too long, I still wait for that sound rising through the earth, the low hum, before everything disappears. Don't turn off your lights yet. If you like the video, hit like and watch the next amazing horror story showing on your screen.